Welcome to the Urban League's 2022 Hamilton County Elections Candidate Interviews. I'm Candy Johnson, and I serve as the President and CEO for the Urban League of Greater Chattanooga. We have worked for nearly 40 years to enable African Americans, other ethnic minorities, and disadvantaged persons to secure economic self-reliance, parity, power, and civil rights. Annually, the Urban League serves between 11 and 15,000 diverse residents throughout Hamilton County. We do this through our 3 empowerment centers focused on educational attainment, family prosperity, leadership development, advocacy, entrepreneurship, and economic opportunity. We believe that government policies and those who help to shape them can either help or hinder the residents that our mission was created to serve. As a nonpartisan organization, it is our duty to bring information to the public from the candidates seeking to serve us. At this time, I would like to welcome County Mayoral candidate, Mr. Weston Womp, onto our virtual stage. All right. Hello, Mr. Womp. How are you?
Hi, Candy. How are you? I'm doing well.
I'm well. So as you know, we're recording and we will be airing these live for the public here soon. And I want to just start off by getting to know a little bit about you. I know that we can do some research online, but I'm going to start with asking some leading questions. The first one, you'll have 2 minutes, and it's our opening question, and then I'll go with the next question, and you'll have 3 minutes. So tell us who you are and why you chose to run for this specific seat for public office. And I also want to put a caveat in there. There's an old saying that you don't have to be elected to serve. And so with that question, what made you choose to serve in this way?
Yeah. Well, thanks. I am a dad of 4 little Hamilton Countyans that range from 11 months old to 7 years old. I grew up here, grew up in Hickson, moved about 20 years ago to Lookout Valley, where I lived as an adolescent and have owned a couple homes there and raised my family in the southwest corner of the city of Chattanooga. And Hamilton County, I've had an interesting business career that started in the technology world. I was on the marketing side of the Lamppost Group, which was one of the most significant small business investment groups really in the history of our community. I transitioned onto the investment side, led the fundraise for the largest startup business investment fund in the history of our county. I've gone on to work in public policy and serve on the Tennessee Board of Regents as one of the 12 civilian regents that leads our state's largest college system. And this opportunity, a first in a generation opportunity in an open seat to run for county mayor, I thought was an opportunity to take action on something I've believed to be the case for many, many years. And that is that the county mayor is the single political position in our community that could have the greatest influence over public education, which is the most important thing that local government does. It is by far and away the largest item in the budget that the county mayor writes every year. I think if we're going to have a renaissance in public education, which we need so desperately in this community, which your husband, I believe, started a lot of the momentum for, I think it needs a county mayor as a champion. And so that really is at the heart of why I'm running.
Thank you for that. And for our next question, you'll have 3 minutes to respond to this. As an elected official, the decisions you make will have an impact on all residents in Hamilton County in some way. We believe that everyone benefits from a more just and equitable system. How will you, if elected as county mayor, ensure that the decisions you make as an elected official will not create even greater barriers and disparities for those who have been historically disadvantaged, i.e. people of color, women, and persistently poor residents relative to the county's growing prosperity?
Yeah. I think often in politics today, particularly in a partisan race like this one, where you run as a Republican or a Democrat, politicians will not only tell voters what they want to hear, they then will go on to serve the voters who got them through a primary. And I think it happens in both parties, just depending on the part of the country that you're in. And I was telling my friend Greg Beck this morning, I saw him out at the voting site, early voting site in Brainerd, that my heart in this is just very different. It's not partisan. Most of what happens in local government shouldn't be partisan. It just happens to be that under state law, we do run for county positions affiliated with a party. I grew up around public service with the understanding being that you're trying to meet needs and address challenges. And I think a leadership position, particularly an executive position like county mayor, calls for leadership. I talked about in the last debate with Channel 3, the difference in management and leadership. Leadership gives us an opportunity to cast a vision, to set priorities. And I think there needs to be a declaration made in this community of what the priorities are. And they ought to be around people and our neighbors who are being left behind. So, I may be running on a Republican ticket. There may be more white folks who vote in the Republican primary. I think that honestly may be changing this year more than ever before. But my desire to serve is actually motivated by an interest in our communities that are hurting the most. And so that's just where my time's going to go. It's where so many of the proposals that are in our Hamilton First platform are designed to serve communities that have been underserved. I mean, the idea of scaling an apprenticeship program in public high schools led by a county mayor working with the public school system and industry, that really is a vision. And as we've seen it piloted in local companies, including some of my closest friends run a company that has 10 Brainerd High School and 10 Eastridge High School students. That's not a program designed around helping kids who are already off on a perfect trajectory in their life. Chattanooga can be a wonderful place to grow up if you're a guy who looks like me. I think I've always been a little bothered by the fact that we focus so much on the narrative of how wonderful things are that we're not honest about the reality that 60% by the state ready grad standard, 60% of our high school seniors aren't ready to go to work or to college. Those numbers become even more challenging when you look at minorities. And so I step into this not trying to figure out how do we make Hamilton County work better for people who, it's already working great for, but how do we prevent our neighbors and friends and family, young and old, who are being left behind from being left behind? How do we serve them better?
Sorry, I didn't take myself off mute. Well, thank you for that. And before I turn it over to Sarah Concepcion, who is our Senior Advocacy and Research Analyst, who will continue on with questions around education, economics, health, and public safety, I want to thank you for taking the call to be a part of this candidate interview forum, and appreciate your time and your interest in serving this community.
Happy to. Thanks,
Thank you. Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction, Candy. And again, candidate Wong, thank you so much for being here. I am going to proceed and have 5 questions that I'm going to ask you. And to each of those questions, you'll have 5 minutes to respond. We have another staff member, if you've seen her in the chat, she's just putting 1-minute time markers. And then when the time is run out for a question, we'll move on from there. Do you have any questions about that? If not, we'll get
No.
Okay, awesome.
I may not use all 5 minutes, but no one may very well use 5 minutes a few times.
That's totally fine. And if you have some extra time at the end, we'd be happy to give you some time for closing remarks too. So we wanted to start by talking about the education realm, as Candy mentioned, and looking into Hamilton County Schools class of 2020 ready graduate data, something that you just mentioned. Only 21% of Black students and 25% of Hispanic students graduating from Hamilton County high schools demonstrated readiness for meaningful post-secondary education, training program, or workforce entry. And that's compared to 53% of white students. So we wanted to ask you, why do you think that these disparities exist for student readiness? And what do you believe can be done to increase the amount of students and in particular students of color who are deemed ready to graduate by the end of high school?
Yeah, I think there's probably a pretty specific answer to the question, and it's that beginning in the 90s, we started abandoning educational opportunities that will serve students of all different giftedness and backgrounds and areas of passion. And everybody was put on a one-size-fits-all track in their education. And so your baseline curriculum at almost any high school, regardless of the community challenges in that high school, it's the same curriculum. And I think it's led to a generation of hopeless students. I think there's a lost generation of students who weren't even given the opportunity to go into the skilled trades. The word vocational education in the world of higher education, in which I often operate as a member of the Board of Regents, sometimes it's frowned upon in career and technical, or there's these other popular words. I often say, no, I think I'm going to reclaim vocational education, because we should reclaim it for the 21st century. We should talk a lot about what it means to be prepared to work. That's going to look very differently. I mean, a four-year degree in many disciplines is less valuable than it's ever been. You can learn almost anything that you want to. Elon Musk was tweeting about this the other day. You can learn almost anything you want to on YouTube. I mean, that is how much the world has changed. You don't have to have $250,000 of student loan debt to go and learn a lot. But short of that, I believe in customization of education. I think our school system has actually taken some profound steps in this direction. We just need to go pour it on. We run an incredible STEM school out on the campus of Chattanooga State. I think the question we ought to begin asking is, why do we not serve students in a more geographically diverse areas with similar options? I worry about the young girl who has all the gifts and passion to become a physician, but that those gifts aren't captured at the right time of her educational trajectory. In the same way that, I think about a dyslexic kid who grows up in rural Hamilton County and is treated like he's not smart, when in reality, if he got on the right path, he could be an extraordinary home builder and entrepreneur, right? I mean, you'll actually hear specifically about dyslexia, how often folks who struggle in that way as a young person become extraordinary thinkers and entrepreneurs. And so my hope is that our big, diverse public school system would continue to customize education. And listen, the single passion of my campaign for county mayor is that we do expand workforce opportunities for our students while they're in, I'm not really talking post-secondary, I'm talking about our students while they're in the Hamilton County Public School System, to gain a set of skills that'll serve them well for the rest of their lives. This may be the golden era to enter the skilled trades. And we're not just talking about welding and plumbing. I mean, out at our technical school, you can get launched out into the health sciences. It's wild. If you go to Automotive Row right now, you'll find that's the strip of car dealerships out in, off Lee Highway. If you go out there right now, you'll find you've got people working in auto body repair, making $100,000 a year. This is really an incredible time to set yourself up with a set of skills. I think one thing we get wrong, probably at a college guidance counselor level in the public school system, is that there's still this stigma that if you go a vocational route, it's lesser than in some way. That's ridiculous. If you've ever worked around entrepreneurship, the most realistic path, and we'll come around to this on a further question, but the most realistic path to small business ownership or entrepreneurship is having a set of skills to begin with. So specifically what we do, well, like ours is a campaign that has claimed the brand and the legacy of the old Kirkman High School, which is this incredible multi-generational vocational school that was downtown. I think in a really terribly ironic way, it was bulldozed in part of the development that created the tourist district. That school's set where the IMAX theater is now. That's okay. That's a good part of the Chattanooga story. But I think what we need to be honest about, particularly in the city of Chattanooga, is that the rising tides of tourism and some economic development left behind big communities, and it may very well have left behind the quality of public education. So that's the passion of my candidacy, of our campaign, is that we reinvest in public education with an emphasis on career training.
Great. Thank you so much for that response. And for our second question in the education realm, current data reflect that 51% of school buildings are rated fair to unsatisfactory in Hamilton County. And according to the district, there's approximately a $12 million funding gap. for maintaining properties and school infrastructure. So we just want to ask, moving forward, how would you ensure the proper investments needed to address the school infrastructure issues are highlighted as a priority?
Yeah. I think the good news here is that some of the most horrible situations, some of the worst situations that have made headlines are being rectified, like as we speak, right? I mean, CSLA is about to get a new facility. Tyner is going to get this sterling new high school. So some of the worst situations, Saudi Daisy Middle School for that matter, I think like it's probably on the short list. So I think the good news is some of the worst situations are being taken care of. The good news also is I think the school system, my friend Tucker McClendon has been a real leader in exploring alternative facilities where the school system can acquire a fairly modern facility, and for a fraction the cost of building a new school, we can open up a very quality educational environment. Schools don't have to be like the facilities don't have to be extraordinary. I mean, even some of the great private schools in our community have pretty modest facilities. You just want the facilities to be dignified. I'd love for some of our facilities to be great, but I also just, I think we got to be, it's been part of my passion all my life, really, that the public school system here would have the confidence, would have the swagger to compete with private schools. But in order to do that, you got to have dignified facilities so that parents aren't making a decision on a facility basis. So I think we can explore these alternative facilities. My grandfather, Don Wamp, was one of the great school architects in the modern era of this county. He primarily was an elementary school architect. He designed Allen Elementary and Red Bank Elementary and Saudi Elementary. So East Ridge Elementary, which is our most diverse elementary school. He took a lot of pride in that. I spent a lot of time walking these job sites with him. So I've spent more time than I think any of the other candidates thinking about what goes into the design and build and construction of public schools. Lastly, I think one of the solutions moving forward, it's not popular in some communities, and I think you only use this solution where it makes sense geographically, but I think we can allow some of our schools to be bigger as we reimagine the physical infrastructure, the physical footprint of the school system. You're going to want community schools to be protected, particularly in the outer lying parts of the county. But, the tradition here of both City High School and Central High School, if you talk to people who went to those schools in the 50s and 60s, these were big schools, and they were proudly big schools, and they ran great athletic programs, and the schools were run with great efficiency. So I'm interested in aggressively bond funding new facilities as are needed. I think that, where we may face some challenges in keeping big corporate tenants in space that they've used to this point, I think the work from home era is going to probably open up new facilities we wouldn't have ever thought about as schools. That can be part of the solution. And then I'm open to building schools more efficiently where we may end up, particularly in high school, with a few bigger high schools where there's opportunities for customization of education for great athletics and where you can, instead of having several school zones all close together, where we might be able to bring some schools together.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We want to transition now to some more economic related questions. So most recent census data reflect that median household income for white families is almost double that of Black families in Hamilton County. Additionally, the Hispanic median income is about 30% higher than the Black median household income. And according to data collected from the Federal Reserve Bank, there are many imbalances in occupational composition between Black and white workers. So fully half of Black residents are currently working in what's deemed less secure sectors, i.e. like manufacturing, arts and recreation, retail, along those lines, that are at risk specifically for future automation. And so knowing this, how can we make sure that all Hamilton County residents can access high quality jobs in today's growing economy?
Yeah.
And what role do you believe the county should play in creating access to those?
The county mayor, if you really utilize the position for all the leadership opportunities that exist, is the person to reframe workforce development and education as being as totally interwoven as I believe they are. In fact, I think economic development, workforce development, education, and even crime are all really the same conversation. Politicians will usually talk about them separately, but they're the same. And I think I have a unique vantage point there just as a member of the Board of Regents, because our college system really is an extension of Tennessee's public school system. Because if you show up at one of our technical colleges, we run 27 of them, or one of our 13 community colleges, including Chattanooga State, you're not turned away, you're accepted. And there may be remediation offered if you're not prepared for a college classroom. But we see the challenges of K-12. We also see the opportunities to prepare young folks for great careers, often for better pay than you're going to get out of a four-year school. I think what we need to be honest about is that, particularly as it applies to people of color, they don't have opportunities in high school to prepare themselves for great careers. You know, Sequoia High School is really the only true vocational school in this county. You go to Sequoia, you can be 2/3 of the way through your technical certification the day you graduate. You've only got one semester of what will be a free technical certification at TCAT Chattanooga. Community college is free in this state. We got to do a better job explaining that to young people, that you can go to the TCAT, you can get yourself on a trajectory where you're going to go to Chattanooga State, get a free degree. That free degree, depending on which one it is, may very well position you for the workforce even better than a four-year degree. But we have all these pathways, that's what we call them in higher education in Tennessee, that take you directly from a two-year degree into a four-year degree. I just don't think we communicate these things well. But I was kind of mortified and just deeply saddened, because one of the passions of my life is vocational career and technical education, to realize that at Brainerd High School right now, if you go to Brainerd and you want to prepare yourself for a career in the skilled trades, which again so often leads to small business ownership and entrepreneurship, there's not even really an opportunity to do that. You can't dual enroll to TCAT from the TCAT Tennessee College of Applied Technology. For people who aren't familiar with the nomenclature within higher education, that's the technical college that shares a campus with Chattanooga State. You can't even dual enroll there. Part of my vision would be, and I'd bring a real know-how to this, I think every single high school student in this county ought to be able to dual enroll at the TCAT. However, we got to figure that out. Every single student should be able to do that. But man, it takes me back to Kirkman and how tragic it is that we have really a lost generation. I think this may have affected minority communities more than we realize that it has, that there just haven't been opportunities to prepare yourself for a great career. And four-year degrees are overrated. I mean, I'm a graduate of our state's flagship university. I made good grades at UT and I learned very little. And I know there are people who go to UT or to better schools and get engineering degrees, or they're on a track to end up being doctors or lawyers. And in that case, you need a four-year degree, but most of us don't, truthfully. And we ought to be more honest with students about how great pay is. I mean, if you come out of the TCAT after a one-year certification, you're likely to make more money. This is crazy, to make more money than you do if you go to UT. But I just don't think that's what we're telling 8th, 9th, and 10th graders who are making some of these decisions about what the rest of their life will look like. And the last thing I'll say is we have taken a step in this direction, because this new construction trade school that's a partnership down at the old Mary Garber Elementary, it's a partnership between our college system, the Board of Regents, the school system, and county government, city government chipped in, the AGC. It's a step in the right direction. It's relatively small considering we're a public school system with nearly 45,000 students, but I got to fight for that. I mean, that was a very unusual project for our school, our college system to invest in. We'd never partnered with a nonprofit. That the holding entity there is basically is a nonprofit. We had never done that. Tennessee's college system had never entered into a memorandum of understanding with a 501c3. One of the reasons that I advocated that we do that and that we put $1 million in addition to equipment, is that it's desperately needed to shore up the disparity in incomes that you referenced.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your response in that. I think we'll shift kind of one more question about economy related to entrepreneurship and small businesses, which you mentioned just a little bit ago. But part of a thriving economy includes the success of small business enterprises, which results in growth of jobs and GDP. And so when you look at, again, data from the Federal Reserve Bank, shows that Black-owned businesses start with 3 times less money than white entrepreneurs, gain 1/10 of revenue over time, and get rejected for loans 3 times more often. And in Hamilton County, only 2% of employer firms are Black-owned, compared to 76.6% of white employer firms.
Hmm.
So what do you think are some of the steps that we can take to equalize that playing field for the growth and success of more traditionally disadvantaged businesses? And what role does government play in that?
Yeah, I think there's really sort of two questions in there. One is about the percentage of small business ownership. The other is about the financing. And I think the answer is the causation is different. First, the percentage, I think we really address that one by doing what I said in my previous answer. I mean, the most realistic path to small business ownership is not getting 17 degrees. It's learning a set of skills. Like you go talk to almost any electrical contractor in this community, go talk to any roofing contractor, on and on and on. You get, I mean, great examples. Go find a hair salon that's not owned by somebody who actually is a licensed hairdresser, right? I mean, the most realistic path to own a small business is having a set of skills. We've done a terrible job for decades of providing skills-based education, particularly, well, to really almost anybody in this county, but certainly I think it's affected disproportionately minority communities. So often, it's the reason I say economic development, workforce development, education are really all completely interwoven. And from the perspective of county government, we got to keep talking about education and career training. On the financing side, I do think that's where Chattanooga has begun to scratch the surface of some unique financing opportunities during the pandemic. I know the Community Foundation was facilitating some loans that were secured by private individuals, lower interest rate, different terms than you're going to get through a bank. I think we ought to talk about doing that, but it ought to be married to, I think the real vision would be marrying those two with a commitment to training our young people with the skills that realistically lead to small business ownership. Because, I think somewhat of a misnomer when you think of the term entrepreneur, or, you think, oh, this is somebody who's got some crackerjack idea, once in a, blue moon idea, and they're going to become a mega millionaire. No, that's not who 99% of entrepreneurs are. And I think that, again, the great lie that's been told to a lot of young people is that this path down a vocational track or into career and technical is going to put a ceiling on your life. And that's insane. That is actually an insane failure of public education, because you can go and get a set of skills. You can go on to get a 4-year degree. You can go on to get a master's degree. You can come out of high school as there's a generation, actually not there are generations of entrepreneurs. I was with some of them this morning who went to Kirkman, they graduated, they were ready to go to work. They figured out, like a lot of people do, how you run a small business, and boom, there you go. They had everything they needed in life to figure out the rest. I do think we ought to be sensitive to where funding opportunities don't exist. And I think I could play a unique role, just having come from the small business funding, venture capital world, in helping to facilitate appropriate investment where necessary. But often the nature of small business, particularly a cash flowing small business, you don't need a whole lot of investment capital on the front end. You really just need the skills to go do the job. Right now, I mean, you can't find a plumber, a plumbing company in this region that can adequately hire folks. The challenge is simply in a lack of prepared. Challenge for growing a business right now is basically just the singular challenge of not being able to find qualified labor.
Thanks for your response to that. Just have one more question, and this is more on the public health side of things. And you had mentioned that earlier as well. But what do you believe are some of the biggest challenges facing our community's health and or safety, and how do you plan on addressing this?
Yeah, I think we need to better understand how the earliest childhood experiences tie into education. There has always been an interest in this community and around the country, and for that matter, around the world, in teaching people to read. There's nothing novel about this. I think there are some politicians who still think there's novelty in saying, oh, early childhood reading is important. Of course, early childhood reading is important. But, in 2004, the county started a reading initiative, and the goal was to get every child reading in 3rd grade. I think we've probably regressed in terms of 3rd grade reading numbers since 2004. We certainly haven't made much headway. And I think it's just a total misunderstanding of how you affect early childhood reading, which is then going to affect longer term educational opportunities. Teachers teach and they try really hard, and there are bad teachers, but there are many more great teachers in this community. And so the vast majority of, we're on spring break right now, but the vast majority of kindergarten, first, second, third grade teachers are going to come back next week, and they're going to do the hard work of preparing or teaching children to read. What we are beginning to understand better is how much of a student's ability to read on grade level is actually determined from birth on, maybe even before birth. And that's all very personal to me. I think this is one of the areas where just having a county mayor who was a dad might understand some of these things in a better way, might approach the job with more empathy. If we really want to see early childhood reading change in this community, that may be more of a health department question or challenge than it is a public school one. And so I'd just love to be a champion of good parenting. Because often I think the most important stuff in our lives happens at such an early age, we don't even realize it's happening.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And we have some extra time now, so I just wanted to give you a few minutes to give closing remarks of any sort that you
Yeah. Well, I mean, I am full of heart. I'm running a pretty unorthodox campaign. I believe deeply that public education is ultimately the most important thing local government does. I think the quality of your community is a reflection of public education. And we have, in some ways, faked it as a community for a long time. And we've not invested properly in public education. I think Candy's husband, Dr. Johnson, gave us some of our swagger back. And I think Justin Robertson is going to follow through on a lot of the good work that's begun. But I don't approach this in a conventional way. I mean, I grew up around politics. I don't really like most political people. I sometimes think both political parties have sort of lost their minds. Local government ought to be the last place that we allow for insane partisan polarization. We just should do better, and we ought to claim that in this community. I think my heart in this is to be a county mayor who is just in the corner of students and parents and teachers all across the county. In a Republican precinct or a Democratic precinct. That's what I'm motivated by. It's why I'm running. I have often laughed. I've answered a lot of questions throughout the campaign, and I'll lead with education. I'll talk about education, and then I'll connect it to economic development or workforce development. And then I'll get a follow-up question, and they'll ask me to talk about something other than education. And then I'll start talking about crime, and I'll connect it back to public education, just because I honestly think it's that important. It's 64% of the county budget, and in a lot of ways that doesn't even give a full picture of it, because other big chunks of that county budget are the judicial system, roads, or things that are just not going to move, right? You're always going to have to pave roads. You always have to operate a judicial system. In terms of really the mechanics of the character of what does county government do that really moves the needle? County government is a public education organization. And because county general government is the only taxing authority, I think everybody in county government ought to get more passionate about public education, not just leave the school board, who plays an important role, but those of us who want to serve in county general government need to become champions of public education too.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your vision and taking time to be here with us. Thanks for what you're doing with your campaign, and for being a dad who's doing that too. We just appreciate your time here. So
well, thank y'all. It's an honor to be with you.
Yeah.
At this time, I would like to welcome County Mayoral candidate Matt Adams onto our virtual stage. Hello, Matt.
Hi, how are you, Candy?
Doing well. Thank you for being with us today, and also for accepting our invitation to speak with the Urban League on issues that are important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad I can make it.
Yeah. So I'm going to start us off with some opening questions, but there's an old saying, you don't have to be elected to serve. So what made you choose to run for this position of county mayor?
Yeah, so no, I think that's a great quote, and that kind of really embodies my mission in life, really, and that is to serve other people. Growing up, my family didn't have a whole lot of money. There were often times where we had to make the decision to cut certain bills so that we could have groceries on the table for our family. And because of that, my parents always taught my siblings and I, hey, we don't have a lot of money, so we can't really give our money to the community, but we can give our time. And I was taught from a very young age, if all you have to give is the shirt off your back, then that's what you give. And so I was appointed as the youngest member ever to my church's administrative board. At 17, I enlisted in the Army and served 8 years on active duty, worked in national security law, criminal prosecution, criminal defense. So again, my life really has been dedicated to public service, and not at all in a elected capacity, but in a capacity that I know that I have an ability to give back my time, my energy, my resources to the community that has given so much to me. And really the catalyst for me to run for Hamilton County Mayor was that I feel like we all have an obligation to leave the country better than we found it. And I think that starts at the most local level, at the city and county governments, because those are your municipal and your county governments are the ones that have the most impact on your day-to-day life. And they're the ones who make the decisions that can really affect either equity or widening of gaps that have been perpetuated over the last 50 or 60 years. So I really feel like we have an opportunity here with electing a new mayor for the first time in almost 12 years to actually, bridge those divides, bridge those gaps that have existed for far too long in our community, and leave Hamilton County better than we found it.
Yeah, thank you for that, Matt. So as an elected official, the decisions you make will have an impact on all residents in Hamilton County in some way. We believe that everyone benefits from a more just, equitable system. How will you ensure the decisions you make as an elected official will not create even greater barriers and disparities for those who have been historically disadvantaged, people of color, women, and persistently poor, relative to the county's growing prosperity?
Yeah, so I love the word equity. I feel like it's a buzzword for sure, but I think that when it comes to policy and when it comes to ultimately the county mayor's chief position, which is that of chief budget officer for the county, he or she has a responsibility, not only a statutory responsibility, but a moral responsibility to ensure that we're investing equitably across our county, and not just in already prosperous neighborhoods or already prosperous pockets of our community. For far too long, that has been an issue in our not only the county government as a whole, but our education system, our health department, our sheriff's department. We have not equitably invested across the county in those three major departments of our county. And we see what ends up happening when we don't do that. Those communities that see smaller investments have higher crime rates, they have lower literacy rates, they have lower educational success rates. So time and again, we see what happens when we're not bridging those gaps and shortening those divides that exist in our community. And the fact is, we have available to us for the first time tens of millions of dollars coming from two major pieces of legislation from Washington that are specifically meant to bridge the divides in our communities: the American Rescue Plan and the bipartisan infrastructure deal. And those two pieces of legislation can really help to jumpstart communities that have been left behind for far too long in Hamilton County. And that's exactly what I hope to do if elected.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts about wanting to run for office and why. Now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Sarah Concepcion. She is our advocacy and research analyst, and she'll continue asking questions in the areas of education economics, health, and public safety. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Candy, for passing it along to me. Like she said, my name is Sarah Concepcion. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what this will look like, and then we'll get going. So we have 5 questions to ask you, and to each of those questions, you'll have 5 minutes to respond. And Candy is going to stay on in the chat and just put in there 1-minute reminders and then time's up reminders so that we can keep on schedule.
Okay.
And if that all sounds good, then we'll get going.
Yep, that works.
Okay, great. So to start in the realm of education, looking into Hamilton County Schools class of 2020 ready graduate data, only 21% of Black students and 25% of Hispanic students graduating from Hamilton County high schools demonstrated readiness for meaningful post-secondary education, a training program, or workforce entry compared to about 53% of white students. So why do you believe that these disparities exist for student readiness? And what do you believe can be done to increase the amount of students, and in particular students of color, who are deemed ready to graduate by the end of high school?
Yeah, so I think that a part of the problem we've seen in Hamilton County when it comes to educational investment is an issue that I've heard from some voters during this campaign. And it's that if a school isn't performing well, then they should get less funding until they start to perform well. And unfortunately, the reality is that schools that are majority minority do tend to perform at a lower level with regards to literacy, with regards to reading comprehension, math retention, and so on. But the problem isn't with taking funding. The problem isn't going to be solved by taking funding away from those schools and reinvesting them into already successful schools. We have over $150 million worth of investments that need to be done to our various school buildings. And so that's really where we need to start when it comes to long-term success of our students in Hamilton County. We see time and again that if a school is literally falling apart, which is the case for some of our schools here in this county, that a student is going to walk in and they're going to see that. And they're going to say, well, if the people in charge don't care enough to actually invest in my school building, then why should I take the time and the energy to invest in my own education? Because clearly the people in charge don't care, so why should I? And so we really need to start using the additional funds that are going to come from the state. This year, the state of Tennessee is investing in an additional $4 billion in public education across the state of Tennessee over the next fiscal year. We're also getting funds from the American Rescue Plan. And the fact is, the American Rescue Plan was designed to close gaps that were exacerbated by COVID-19. And the gaps that exist in our education system have clearly been exacerbated by COVID-19 over the last 2 years. And so we need to invest those funds into the physical and digital infrastructure of our schools. We also need to look at making sure we're empowering our teachers and our administrators, and look at the long-term effects of making sure that we're paying market value for our teachers and our administrators in Hamilton County. Because I can certainly tell you that our teachers, administrators, and our support staff, if we paid them $1 billion a year, they wouldn't be getting paid enough, in my opinion. But we certainly need to look at the long-term effects of the success of our students based on the empowerment or lack thereof of our teachers and faculty and staff of our schools.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering that question. I'll go ahead and read question 2, which you already began to dive into, but if you want to add anything else, I'll let you do so. So current data reflect that 51% of school buildings are rated fair to unsatisfactory in Hamilton County. And according to the district, there's about a $12 million annual funding gap in maintaining those properties. So moving forward, how would you ensure that proper investments that are needed to address school infrastructure issues are highlighted as a priority?
Yeah, so I personally I take issue with that number of $12 million, because the reality is we have individual schools that have 5 and 6 times as much needed repairs just at that one school. So to say that we have a $12 million gap in funding for our physical and digital infrastructure for our schools is completely misleading to the public. When again, we have schools that have tens of millions of dollars of necessary repairs, to the point to where it's going to be more cost effective in some cases to buy a new building than it will be to actually spend the money to do the repairs to already existing buildings. And that's not something that a lot of people are excited about. I went to a school K-8 that that building was built in 1971, but the school as an actual school was started in 1916. So I truly understand the importance of a school being an anchor in a community and being, a center point for the community to all kind of rally around. But when you've got a school that has 58, 68, $80 million of necessary repairs, it's not going to be cost effective for that community for us to continue to fund those repairs. So again, going back to what I was saying earlier, using funds that we've never had before with the bipartisan infrastructure deal, with the state funding, with the American Rescue Plan, because the success of our county really does start with the education of our children, and the education of our children starts with the buildings that our students go to every school day.
Thank you for sharing your perspective on that. We're going to transition now more to economics related questions. So most recent census data reflect that median household income for white families is almost double that of Black families in Hamilton County. Additionally, Hispanic median income is about 30% higher than Black median household income. And according to the data collected by the Federal Reserve Bank, there are many imbalances in the occupational composition of Black and white workers. For example, fully half of Black workers are currently working in what you deem less secure sectors, i.e. manufacturing, arts, recreation, that are at risk for future automation. So knowing this, how can we make sure that all Hamilton County residents can access high quality jobs in today's growing economy? And what role do you believe that the county should play in creating access to those opportunities?
Yeah, I use the word opportunity a lot because I think that really is what this campaign is based around, is giving folks opportunities. We talk a lot, this campaign talks a lot about vocational training, about education and educational investment. And those are all great. And those all can provide our students pipelines to the workforce, to more secure jobs. But the fact is we have several folks that aren't in our education system here in the county that don't have the necessary opportunities to be successful long-term, whether that be financially or otherwise. And so what we need to start looking at is the long-term investments in our infrastructure here in Hamilton County, and making sure that we are providing the necessary infrastructure to provide those opportunities for folks. We have 16 precincts that exist in food deserts in Hamilton County. And that, according to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, within a major city, so like Chattanooga, it's a half a mile or more away from a place to get groceries, and that's not a gas station or anything like that. That's an actual grocery store. And so making sure we're building the infrastructure necessary to close those gaps. There's also several places in Hamilton County where you have to drive 45 minutes or longer to get to a doctor's office that you can afford. And so helping to provide the necessary infrastructure for that as well. And part of that's going to be working with organizations like Erlanger after they've made their transition to a 501c3 to make sure that we have as robust of a relationship with them as possible, They were the last public hospital, or they are the last public hospital in Hamilton County. And so after they've made the transition, we'll no longer have a public hospital. So it's going to be paramount to the success of our community to ensure that we continue the robustness of our relationship with them moving forward, to be able to help them develop more satellite facilities across the county and not just in the Chattanooga metro area. And then lastly, making sure that we are investing long-term in public transportation in Hamilton County. Hamilton County pretty typically invests about $100,000 in CARTA annually. When I tell people that, their response is often, "What is CARTA going to do with $100,000?" And I usually say, "Wash the windows, maybe." So there's not a whole lot that the only public transportation organization organic to the county can do with that kind of money. There is going to be increased funding from the state to help close the gaps that exist in public transportation across the state over the next coming years. And then also long-term investment coming from the state and federal governments with regards to rail transportation. So making sure that we're doing everything we can at the county level to work with nonprofit and private sector organizations to provide as many opportunities as possible and not just putting people to work.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your vision for Hamilton County residents. In the next question, another part of a thriving economy includes the success of small business enterprises, which results in rapid growth in jobs and the GDP. So if we go back again to data from the Federal Reserve Bank, it shows that Black-owned businesses start with 3 times less money than white entrepreneurs, gain 1/10 of the revenues over time, and get rejected for loans 3 times more often. And in Hamilton County, only 2% of employer firms are Black-owned compared to 76.6% of white employer firms. So what do you believe are some of the steps that we can take to equalize the playing field for the growth and success of disadvantaged businesses? And what role does the government play in that?
Yeah, so the fact is, according to the Census Bureau and according to several independent studies, Hamilton County over the next 25 or 30 years is on track to be a majority minority county. So we really do have to look at the long-term success of residents that don't fit a certain mold or look a certain way. And make sure that we're empowering every resident of this county. And one of the ways that we certainly can do that is going back to the earlier questions about education and making sure that we're providing a track for our students going into the future, going into the next phase of their lives, so that they are prepared, whether that be with vocational training or some sort of other post-secondary community college, a 4-year degree, something like that, to make sure that they are successful long-term. But then also going back to what I was saying about opportunistic infrastructure, and making sure that we're doing everything we can to empower the communities, and not just the communities that have a certain net worth, or the communities that input a certain number of dollars into the GDP of the county, but into every community, so that we can have as equitable as possible of a county for the generations moving forward. Because what I certainly don't want is for the next generation, when they're old enough to vote and run for office, start their own business, that they're having to deal with the same problems and solve the same issues that you and I are. That's certainly a disservice to the future of this county, and it's certainly a disservice to our residents. And so we really do need to make sure that we're looking at the long term. How can we affect and implement as many opportunities as we can within the confines of the county government?
Thank you for your response to that question. We just have one more. That's along lines of public health and safety, which you've also mentioned at some point earlier. So, public health and safety is a cornerstone issue for creating thriving communities. What do you believe are some of the biggest challenges facing our community's health and/or safety? And how do you plan to address these?
Yeah, so I think so. I'll touch on safety first, since I already kind of talked about public health. But with regards to public safety, we've seen time and again across the United States, and specifically not too far from here in Nashville with their Metro PD, the short-term effects even of a robust community engagement program from the police department and the sheriff's department, and making sure that we are showing our members of our community, our neighbors, that the sheriff's department, the police departments, can be there to protect you, and that's really fundamentally what they are there for, is to protect and serve. Right, that's their mantra. And a robust community engagement program can look different depending on where you're at, the funding for that department. I know that in Nashville, the police are, they go to bus stops, and they go to classrooms and read. So it can look very different depending on your community. But I certainly think that the studies that have been done on law enforcement community engagement programs have shown pretty much nothing but positive results, regardless of the municipality. And that's, everywhere from Chicago to Nashville, from Asheville to Sacramento. And so several studies have been done in very differing municipalities, and to show how beneficial they can be to the community. I think community engagement can really help to solve a lot of our issues, not just with law enforcement, but with every division and department within Hamilton County government. And one of those certainly is public health, making sure that our health department is engaging with nonprofits that exist in the community to help to alleviate stressors on public health for certain areas of the community. And then that's also going to, again, go back to Erlanger. They're going to make the transition next year, and we really have to make sure that we're working lockstep with them to provide as many public health resources across Hamilton County that we can, to make sure that it is not a burden to be a healthy, thriving individual in Hamilton County. Because unfortunately, the reality is living a healthy lifestyle for several folks in this county can present itself as a burden. And so we really do have to make sure that we're working with private and nonprofit and corporations to help bridge those divides that exist for our communities.
Yeah, thank you for answering that question, and all the others as well. Since we have a few extra minutes, I wanted to open it up to you if you want to make any closing remarks or statements.
Yeah, again, I just want to say thank you so much for having me today. I do really appreciate it, and I really appreciate the folks that are going to listen to this and hear my thoughts on how we truly can make Hamilton County a more equitable, thriving, and opportunistic county if we all work together. There are several steps that need to be taken, and it's going to be. I hear folks say, this is an uphill battle. My response to that is always, well, it's a battle worth fighting. And I think that making Hamilton County better than we found it is certainly going to be an uphill battle. But again, it's a battle worth fighting, and I'm really ready to take on that fight if I get the opportunity to be elected in August. So thank you so much again for having me today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for being here and for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
We appreciate you for being here with us today. Thank you for being here with us, Mr. Graham. So there's an old saying that says you don't have to be elected to serve. So what made you choose to run for this position? Really, why are you running for this elected seat? And tell us a little bit about who you are. You have about 2 minutes for that, and then I'll ask you another question as well.
Okay. Well, I'm a husband. I married my high school sweetheart. My wife and I have been together since junior high. She's the air that I breathe. I'm madly in love with my wife. I have 4 beautiful children from the age of 27 down to 16. My oldest son has 3 children and a beautiful wife. So our family is just rapidly growing. If I'd have known grandchildren were this much fun, I believe I would have skipped children, went straight to grandchildren. It's awesome. I'm a small business owner, and by small business owner, it means my wife and I, not long out of high school, started our first business. Shortly thereafter, that started our second and then our third. And my wife and I still operate those businesses today. It's a family, completely family run organization. I guess you'd say I really work for my wife. I've been a volunteer in our community for many, many, many years. I've been a volunteer at our schools for many, many, many years. A few years, 4 or 5 years ago, we started a Green Prix, which is an electric go-kart team at the elementary school, Lookout Valley Elementary School. And now we have 2 teams, and I've been with them since the beginning. I'm one of the coaches that oversee both teams. I've been a Lions Club member for 15, 16 years. I've been involved with our recreation centers for over 20 years. I've been the Lookout Valley Neighborhood Association president for many, many years and held many offices there. But I'm also one of the founding members of that organization. And I also do many things for our veterans. I do a lot of things for our veterans. So to answer your question about you don't have to be elected to serve, you're exactly right. I'm 56 years old, and I was raised in a civil servant family, and I've been serving my community or my church or even my family and neighborhood as far back as I can possibly remember. Even as a little boy, when I first learned how to use the push mower, my parents had us mowing the lawns for our elderly neighbors without being paid. It was just being a good neighbor. So I've been volunteering my whole life.
Thank you for that, Joe. Really appreciate that. So, as an elected official, the decisions you will make will have an impact on all residents in Hamilton County, not just a specific district. We believe that everyone benefits from a more just and equitable system. How will you ensure, if elected, that the decisions you make will not create even greater barriers and disparities for those who have been historically disadvantaged, people of color, women, and those who are persistently poor residents, relative to the county's growing prosperity?
That is a great question, Ms. Johnson, and thank you so much for asking it. I totally agree 100%. The decisions that we make as a county commissioner, and I was a county commissioner from 2010 to 2018, and I was the chairman of diversity for many of those years. The decisions that we make on the commission have a ripple effect and a long-term ripple effect with lasting residual. So you have to be very diligent when you do things on the county commission. You have to be very diligent with question and answer. You have to do your homework. You have to study the issue ins and outs. You got to listen to your constituents. You got to listen to constituents throughout the county before you make this decision. You know, that's why during redistricting, I started to, on my own, I started to research the rules and regulations, even though I was in redistricting and I was on the committee for redistricting back in 2011, I think it was. I found out in state law that you can have a minimum of 9 districts, a maximum of 25. And so I went on my own and presented a presentation to the commissioners and asked, after doing my research with the state of Tennessee, if we could add more commissioners. Why? Why would you want to do that? I believe in small government. I really do. But local government is really and truly where the rubber meets the road. It's really and truly where things get done. If you have an issue, you're not going to call a state representative or your federal representative. You're going to call your local representative and try and work out the issue. So if we would have added, and we were successful to get 2 more commissioners. I'm running in District 11, one of the new districts, what I think is the most diverse district in all 11. But I was asking for 18 districts, hoping to get a minimum of 15, was fortunate enough to get us to 11. But the reason I did that, Ms. Johnson, is because the truth be known, if we would have went 15 or even 18 would have been ideal. If we'd have went 18 districts, every small, strong community and the weak communities would have had their own representative as a county commissioner. So basically, in other words, they would have their own seat at the board or their own seat at the table. And that would have been amazingly diverse for every color, every creed, every neighborhood. And it would have made decision making way better because it's not going to take 5 votes to get something to pass. It would have taken 11 or 12. And that is very strong and powerful for all the communities to have a seat at the table.
Thank you for those insights. I'm now going to turn it over to Sarah Concepcion so that she can continue with our interview as well.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Hi, thanks, Candy, for that introduction. And thank you, Candidate Graham, again, for being here today.
Thank you, Sarah. Are you Sarah?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I have 5 questions to ask you, and you will have 5 minutes to answer each of those. If you haven't seen yet, we have another staff member who's with us in the chat who is just dropping little marks when it's 1 minute left and then when time's up for a question. So if you want to keep an eye on that, you can do that, and I'll let you know too as well. So
I'm very passionate about this job, and I'm very passionate about what we do. So if I'm running long, I apologize. I'll try to speed it up a little bit, but it's hard to get a good solid answer in such a short period of time, especially with these very difficult questions, very good questions.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we thank you again for being here and for tackling these questions. So if that all makes sense, then we can go ahead and get started.
Sure.
So we were going to start with some questions in the education realm. First and foremost, so if you look at Hamilton County Schools class of 2020 Ready graduate data, only 21% of Black students and 25% of Hispanic students are graduating, demonstrating readiness for meaningful post-secondary education, a training program, or workforce entry. And that's compared to about 53% of white students. So we wanted to ask you, why do you believe that these disparities exist for student readiness? And what do you believe can be done to increase the amount of students, and in particular students of color, who are deemed ready to graduate by the end of high school?
Well, thank you for that, Sarah. And this is a great question. There is no silver bullet to any of these questions. There is no snap of a finger and have a great answer or a great solution. If there was, trust me, I'd be praying every day that we were able to use that to solve these problems. This begins at the home. The family structure and the question about why would it be more the Black constituents instead of the Hispanic or even the white constituents. This all begins in the home, and the family structure in the Hispanic and the white community is a little bit more involved in most areas of this district. Now, I'm not speaking countywide, but in this district. So it's very important to get more family involvement. Solutions are programs in the neighborhood, programs in our community centers, programs in our churches, in our they say it takes a village, right, to raise our children, and we've got to get back to more of being a village. If one of our neighbors or one of our friends and family members have children at home that don't have parents or being raised by their grandparents or aunts and uncles, then the people in that community need to reach out and help that family the best they can in many ways. The real issues that we're having is education when it comes to this. And you're going to hear me say that a lot today, because when we have children that can't read past the 3rd grade level and they're being passed on through school, it is a huge disadvantage. I don't care what color you are or what background you're from. If you can't read and write, or really and truly, I'd like to see home economics come back to school. If you can't do the things that have to happen in a home economic situation, and I'm talking about frying an egg, I'm talking about mowing the grass, I'm talking about signing a check, I'm talking about writing a letter. There's so many people today, young people, that don't even know how to address or sign a letter. So we have got to get back to the basics. Is there a silver bullet, like I said, for this? No, I wish there was. But the only way that we fix this problem is we work together. We maybe form more after school projects, or after school programs, weekend programs, summer programs. We include churches. We include the rec centers like the Bethlehem Center and other sports areas. We get them playing. I was in St. Elmo just last night, and there was an older Black gentleman stood up and he said when his kids were growing up, we had ping pong, we had tennis, we had baseball, we had all these outdoor activities. And so many children are stuck playing video games or watching videos. All that's fine. I'm sure we can find time for that. But we got to get the kids outside playing, learning about nature, learning about our community, and learning about their community and their fellow Black, white, and all colors of their friends and neighbors, we've got to come together. We got to actually forget color if we can and come together.
Thanks for your answer on that. To move to our second question, current data reflect that 51% of school buildings are rated fair to unsatisfactory in Hamilton County. According to the district, there is approximately an annual $12 million funding gap for maintaining school infrastructure. So moving forward, how would you ensure the proper investments needed to address the school infrastructure issues highlighted as a priority?
Another great question. And unfortunately, there'll never be enough money to tackle this quickly. You know, the county has done a very good job. When I was on the commission from 2010 to 2018, you know, I think we spent almost $1 billion on new schools, and you know, it takes time, it takes money, and it takes a lot of effort. It takes a conscious plan is what it needs. We need long-term planning, and we need to prioritize those long-term plans. And we need to make those plans. We've had many long-term plans that have never been adhered to. So what we need to do is, in a long-term plan, we need to take that long-term plan for what buildings need to be done and what needs to be improved. But we also, in the long-term plan, need to figure out the financial aspect of it as well. There's a lot of schools that are actually in pretty good shape. They've just been neglected for a long time. And that $12 million you're talking about, unfortunately, as a county commissioner, we have no control over how the school board spends the money. They're their separate entity. They have their own authority, which I appreciate, and I admire them for that authority that's given to them by the state constitution. But as a county commissioner, one other thing too, the school board cannot carry debt. It's state law. So if they were to need $40 million to build a school, they can't go out and borrow $40 million unless they can pay that $40 million back in a 12-month period. So the county commissioners, including myself, several years ago, have decided, well, let me back up a little bit. Years ago, the schools bought and paid for their own schools. The county commissioners never did do it. They paid for them out of their own budget, and they budgeted for new schools. But then when the city and the county merged systems, the city's buildings were so far behind and dilapidated that it put the entire system way behind. So that's when the county commissioners slowly and now very aggressively had started taking over capital projects and the debt, because as general government, we can carry the debt, whereas the school system can't. So even though the school system is allocating $12 million for these projects or for this repairs, they very seldom are fortunate enough to be able to spend that much per year, because they're using that money for other issues within their system. So the county commission has done fabulously well in fixing roofs, building new buildings, and we'll continue to do that as long as I'm there. I think one thing that we could also do, and I did this when I was a commission before, but it was reversed shortly after it was put into place. These big pilot agreements that we get, you know, prior to me being on the commission, these companies never paid the school portion when they got the pilot agreement. When I was on there, we changed that to where these companies would pay the school portion of the pilot agreement. And, you know, the businesses didn't mind. They actually expected it. They wanted to be involved with our schools. So it was a very good thing. What I would like to see done is take the pilot agreement money that the big businesses are paying for, set it aside, and have a building fund. Set it aside for a building fund. If we would have done that and continue doing that, we would have already, just out of that fund alone, would have been able to pay cash for at least 4 new schools since 2011 when I did that to now. So there's a lot of different things that we can look at. Main thing is we've all got to work together. We got to put our heads together, and we got to come up with a plan that we can all get behind. Commissioners come and go, mayors come and go, state legislators come and go. If we put a good plan into place, it'd be like a baton at a race. We can pass that baton off to the next group of commissioners, and hopefully they'll carry that baton long enough for the next group and the next group, and we'll get there. And we'll get there.
Thanks for sharing your insights on that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We are going to transition now to questions more related to economics. So the most recent census data reflect that median household income for white families is almost double that of Black families in Hamilton County. Additionally, Hispanic median income is about 30% higher than the Black median household income. And according to data by the Federal Reserve Bank, there are many imbalances in the occupational composition between Black and white workers. So what do I mean by that? Fully half of Black residents are currently working in what's deemed less secure sectors, such as manufacturing, arts and recreation, retail, along those lines. And they're at risk for future automation and technology displacement by 2030. So knowing this, how can we make sure that all Hamilton County residents can access high quality jobs in today's growing economy? And what role do you think that the county should play in creating access to those opportunities?
Thank you again, Sarah. And that is another great question. And talking about manufacturing, one of my businesses is a printing company, and we manufacture printing, we manufacture signing, and we manufacture a lot of different things. So I think manufacturing is the key to our country. So I think that's a good job for that matter. And most manufacturing jobs pay very well. So I think that's a great thing. You know, the key to, and you're going to hear me say this a lot today as well, but the key to whether it's a Black student, Hispanic student, or even a white student, the key to a better job is an education. You know, education, education, education. And the reason being is we have too many students that come out of school that can barely read, barely write, and barely do math. You know, we've got to get back to the basics. I realize that we have to teach a lot of different things, and that our students are more enriched by as much as we can teach. But if they can read well when they get out of high school, if they can figure and do math well when they get out of high school. And again, I'm a strong proponent for home economics because there's so many things in home economics that our children are not getting today, whether it be cooking, whether it be sewing, whether it be setting up a household, whether it be doing a household budget, whether it be paying bills and keeping up with a household budget, using those resources that they earn in a proper manner so they can make it last longer and have a long-term goal for themselves. It's not being taught anymore. It was taught when I was in school. It's not being taught anymore. So we've got to get back to the basics. And as far as jobs and as far as helping any student get a better paying job, you know, there's been a misnomer that's been taught to us since when I was a kid. You know, when I was growing up, and even it's just now slowly starting to change, you know, that the trades are not as good. You needed a college education, you need a college degree, you know, and that's great. That's great. But college is not for everybody. You know, being an electrician is a great paying job for a lot of people that don't get the opportunity because they're not reading well, or they're not figuring well, and they don't have the background from their elementary, middle, and high schools. So electrician, block layers, carpenters, I mean, auto mechanics make great money. You can build an automobile right here at Volkswagen. I mean, there's so many different, the sky is the limit for any student that wants to better themselves and do anything they want to do. We have to do a better job educating these students so these opportunities are made readily available to them. And as a county commissioner, I will work diligently to help that to happen.
Thank you for answering that question. Our next one relates to small business enterprises. So we know that part of a thriving economy includes the success of small businesses, which results in rapid growth in jobs and overall GDP. And so data, once again, from the Federal Reserve Bank shows that Black-owned businesses start with 3 times less money than white entrepreneurs, gain 1/10 the revenues over time, and get rejected for loans 3 times more often. In Hamilton County, only 2% of employer firms are Black-owned compared to 76.6% of white employer firms. So what do you believe are some of the steps we can take to equalize the playing field for the growth and success of more disadvantaged businesses, and what role should government play in that?
Sarah, another great question. And I don't know if you or the people that are listening have ever started a small business. My wife and I were in our early 20s when we started our first business, and it was the printing company. You know, we had to buy a bunch of equipment. We bought a little bitty house, and we did it on our own. Our parents didn't help us in any way. To this day, I love my parents, and she loves hers. They never helped us in any way. We were always on our own. Starting a small business is scary, scary stuff. Shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. An entrepreneur, and I don't care if you're of any color, an entrepreneur, or if you got the drive, or if you got what my dad used to say, the fire in your belly to do something that you want to do on your own, or if you've got an idea that you think is going to revolutionize something, then, or you just you're working for somebody and you think you can do a better job, even if it's not revolutionary. The printing business has been around forever and ever and ever. And if you just think you can do a better job than where you're at, you should have those opportunities. In order to have those opportunities, though, in order to have that fire in your belly, again, it goes back to education, economic, social backgrounds. You have got to be able to read, write, and cipher, or do math and figure things out. You got to be able to fight for yourself. And it's hard to fight for yourself or fight for your new startup business if you don't have the basic education that most of our children are missing on. So to start up a business, we've got the incubator over here, which is a fabulous resource for everybody. And it's been very, very successful. And it's what's good about our incubator is it helps any small entrepreneur. There are so many things that when you start a business, you've got to know. I mean, I'm talking about taxes and withholding taxes and property taxes and personality taxes and all this other stuff. And then you have to have OSHA regulations, and you have all these different insurances and all these size of building, and then how to set up, like I said, I'm a manufacturing person, how to set up your assembly line or how to set up your manufacturing facility. All this is stuff that's been done for so many years that can be taught to any young individual that has a fire in their belly that wants to start a new business, either through our chamber or through our incubator system. But again, in order to have the confidence in yourself to be able to try to do this, you've got to be able to read and write and have the skills that you should have learned or should be able to learn in elementary, middle, and high school.
Yeah, thanks for your comments on that too. Just for one last question related to public health and safety. So hypertension, cancer, and diabetes all present at higher rates in the Black population than the white population in Chattanooga, and Hamilton County more broadly. The mortality rate from diabetes for Black Chattanoogans is more than 3 times that of white Chattanoogans. So we wanted to know, how do you see the County Commission working with the health department and local organizations to address the issue of chronic disease that disproportionately affects people of color?
No more of my grandmother's sweet tea. No, I'm just kidding. My grandmother used to put as much sweet tea in there, I think the tea would stand on its own. And I love sweet tea. My family, we all love sweet tea. It starts again with education, but it's a different type of education when it comes to health issues and diabetes. As I said, I'm a long-term member of the Lions Club. I went all the way through the ranks several times. And matter of fact, I was even in state Lions Club. I was the vice district governor of our region. Lions Club have taken on, we've always done sight and eyeglasses, but we've taken on in the last several years diabetes and diabetes awareness. So many people, it's in the way they eat, and it's in the stuff that they drink, it's stuff that they consume, and they have no idea what that does to their body because they haven't been taught. So it's awareness, it's education. I would very much partner with the health department, and have on many different issues, but I would very much partner with the health department, and hopefully they could do clinics in our elementary schools, clinics in our and they do a lot of clinics, but clinics in our rec centers. And if we're going to do summer activities and we're going to have the ears of our residents in a better manner, more outreach, then we can teach and make people more aware of the signs of these issues and what to look for and how to combat them, or at least how to go get checked. Our health department checks so many things. Our health department is by far the best in the region as far as I'm concerned, but they have the resources and the tools and the talents to reach out to the community and educate. So it's all going to be about education. Again, it's just a different form of education. And that's not just students. That's adults. That's young adults. That's our seniors. What to look out for heart disease, what to look out for good eating habits, what to look out for the diabetes. A lot of the signs that you may miss, and it may be too late. So we'd have to partner with our health department, maybe our schools and our churches, and have these outreach programs to do better.
Thanks for sharing your vision on that, and for the other questions as well. We have a few extra minutes here, so if you want to just take some time to make any closing remarks that you'd be interested in sharing, go ahead and do that.
So I have like 45 minutes?
Oh, maybe like 2 to 3.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Sarah, and you, Miss Johnson, and the Urban League for all the hard work that you all do every day. As I said, I was an advocate of the Urban League, and I worked very closely with Warren Logan. He was a jewel of a man, and he was a huge, valuable asset to Hamilton County, and we greatly miss him. And we all know he's in heaven, and he's doing great things with God in heaven. But the Urban League has a strong task and a strong job ahead of them. And if I'm fortunate enough to become the county commissioner for this new district that I helped to get in this District 11, I hope that you will believe me when I say this. I want to partner with you. I want to partner with you long term, and I want you all to keep educating me as a commissioner, me as a person, and all the other commissioners. I want you to hopefully, if successful, come into us and have some training sessions with us. Bring different topics of necessity that we all need to know. So when you train us, kind of like train the trainer, when you train us, all the constituents that we go out and that we meet with and we talk to, hopefully the commissioners can take the information that you teach us, that we can take them out into our communities with our residents and teach them as well. And there's so many different things that you all do that nobody even really knows about, or a lot of people don't know about, that we need to sound the alarms. We need to let people know, and let people know what resources are available. There's a lot of resources that are available to many people of all color that they don't even know that they're available. So we've got to do a better job of that. And I know you all work very diligently to do that. So if given the opportunity, and if I'm blessed to be a county commissioner, then I will absolutely work with you well. The one other thing I wanted to throw out there, and then I'll hush, I promise, is I'm just very passionate about this job, as you can tell. I have the fire in the belly to be a public servant. I've been in business for a long time. I've been in community. I've worked in the church. I've worked in our community, as I said in our speeches. But the one thing that I think that we're fortunate enough to find out is, everybody has their calling in life. Maybe it's being a teacher, maybe it's being a plumber, maybe it's being a fisherman, whatever it is, everybody has their calling. And I truly believe that being a public servant is my calling. So that's exactly why I've decided to get back into this race. I love to fish. I've got some antique cars. I got some beautiful grandchildren. We love to ride around and fish and do a lot of things. But I've still got this drive, and I've still got this want to help in me that I believe as a county commissioner, I can enlighten a lot of people and help them to do better, or at least give them the resources to help themselves do better. So that's exactly why I'm running again. I believe it's my calling.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and talk through those questions. And like you said, they're tough questions and
very tough, very tough.
Thank you for your passion for public service. It's encouraging to hear.
Thank you very much. And thank you again for having me. This is awesome what you all are doing.
Oh, thanks so much. We're excited to have you.
At this time, I would like to welcome District 11 candidate Montrell Besley to the stage. Thank you for accepting this invitation to speak with the Urban League.
It was my
so yes, I have two questions for you.
Go for it.
So the first one is, there's an old saying, you don't have to be elected to serve. So what made you choose to run for this position? And tell us who you are. While you're at it, you will have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so that is very true. You don't have to be elected to serve. I've been serving since I set foot back here in Chattanooga back in 2009, coming home from school, graduated from Austin P with my bachelor's in health and human performance, and then turned around and get my master's in public and community health. Long time Chattanooga native, been here for all my life, just left to go to Austin P State University, where I met some fabulous people, and I still carry them with me today on into life. And they're a very big support group of mine. But I'm running because initially I was running for District 4, and then the redistricting came along, and, I had to go revisit that conversation, with my family. And, they told me, hey, Montreal, still go ahead and do it. Still go and run for that office, because if you don't run, who will? So I was like, you know what, you're right. And, my whole purpose for running is to show that native people that live in Chattanooga, to show them that you don't have to leave our city to be successful or make a name for yourself. You don't have to leave our city to get recognition and whatever you're seeking. You can become a successful productive citizen right here in Chattanooga. So I always encourage all of my friends, all the people I come back to come back home when you graduate. We need you. And then my second reason for running was that I've always been that voice for the voiceless. I always stood in the gap for those who couldn't stand in the gap. And I have to continue to be that because now my community in East Lake, my community is Alton Park and East Lake. We're the two poorest communities in my district. So we're in the same district as a Lookout Mountain, St. Elmo, downtown, and Missionary Ridge. So we're already in Lookout Valley. So we're already in a district with 5 other thriving communities. And if I don't be that voice, we're going to continue to get left at the bottom of the totem pole and continue to be unheard and looked over. So I have to do it for my community, and I have to do it for the kids I serve to show them that they don't have to be these flashy athletes. They don't have to go on and do these other things that they see on TV. They can be the change factor in their own city and not have to do all those playing basketball, running the football, hitting the baseball. They don't have to do that. They can make a change right here locally by running for office and being that decision maker in our city. Hopefully I didn't go over my 2 minutes. I'm sorry if I did.
No, that was a wonderful answer. Thank you for answering that.
No
I'm just going to move into our second one. As an elected official, the decisions you make will have an impact on all residents in Hamilton County in some way. We believe that everyone benefits from a more just, equitable system. How will you ensure the decisions you make as an elected official will not create an even greater barriers and disparities for those who have been historically disadvantaged, such as people of color, women, and persistently poor residents, relative to the county's growing prosperity?
So the first thing I would do is involve all parties, all of my neighborhood associations. Before I make any decision, I want to consult with them and, make sure the decision I'm making will benefit all of the communities that's within District 11. And we'll sit down and have that, in-depth conversation, and then I will make my decision. But to make all of us equitable, make everything equitable, we just have to continue to work together. We have to build each other up. That's one thing I want to do with District 11. I mentioned that, Alton Park and East Lake are the poorest communities within my district. So I want to figure out ways that, we can partner with those already thriving, communities to see how we can bring Alton Park and East Lake back up to what it once was. Because at one point in time, we thrived. We thrived like crazy. And that dollar didn't leave Alton Park or East Lake until this 4th rotation. So we have to figure out together how we can get back like that. And I know we can with my leadership and all of the partnership and connections that I have. So we have a good future, a very good future. So hopefully I'm definitely elected into that District 11 seat to make things more equitable.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for your responses and for taking the time to meet with us today. I will now pass it over to Sarah Concepcion, our advocacy and research analyst, to continue asking questions in the areas of education, economics, and health and public safety.
My passion. Go ahead, Sarah. Hit me with it. Hopefully I can answer.
All right. Well, thanks to Stephanie for the introduction. And thank you, candidate Vesley, for being here with us, for taking the time to answer these questions. I have 5 questions for you, and you'll have 5 minutes to answer each one of them. And if you haven't, you can pull up your chat. Stephanie is going to just drop in a 1-minute time reminder and then a time's up reminder.
Please keep no time, because I keep talking and you have to stop me.
Okay. Well, we will with the chat, and I'll let you know if that time goes up for any of the questions. So if that all makes sense, then we'll go ahead and start talking through the questions.
Let's do it.
All right, great. So we're going to start in the realm of education with the first 2 questions. So looking into Hamilton County Schools class of 2020 ready graduate data, only 21% of Black students and 25% of Hispanic students graduating from Hamilton County Schools demonstrated readiness for meaningful post-secondary education, a training program, or workforce entry, compared to about 53% of white students. Why do you believe that these disparities for student readiness exist? And what do you believe can be done to increase the amount of students, and in particular, students of color, who are deemed ready to graduate by the end of their 4 years?
Right. So that first question, why is it like this? It's because our kids have to work. Yeah, our young men and our young women are a income in their household, so they have to work. So we have to figure out a system to alleviate them from having to be that, breadwinner and help mom or dad out in their, or granny out in their households. A lot of people always say, it starts at home. It does not start at home. It starts in the community. We have to figure out a way to support our young people while they're in schools. That's what I experienced growing up in school. And I was one of those kids that wasn't ready going into college. But I thought I was, because I was involved in everything. I was in honor society. I was in all that good stuff, but I wasn't ready when I got to school. But what we can do is invest more into our kids, invest more into programming, invest more into, our teachers, invest more into, taking so much of the focus. Yes, we have to have testing. I get it, but not letting so much of the focus being on testing while our kids are in school. And we just have to stand up and fight and provide for our kids, whether it's meals, whether it's extra study time, whether it's access to, study material. That is a very big thing our kids don't have really access to, unless you're in a private school, is study material. We don't have the materials to be prepared to take the test. We don't have the materials to be ready to going into college, but we can do it as a village. We can do it as a community, because I've seen it done. I'm a product of it. So it's going to take some investment. It's going to take some community investment, and it's going to take some investment from county commission and other government municipalities that we have in our county.
Great. Thank you so much for your response to that question. For our second question, relates to school buildings. So current data reflect that 51% of school buildings are rated fair to unsatisfactory right now in Hamilton County. And according to the district, there's about a 12 million annual funding gap for properly maintaining school infrastructure. So moving forward, how would you ensure proper investments are prioritized to address this school infrastructure issue?
Yeah, so I think one of our biggest, that's a great question. I think one of our biggest issues is the buildings that our schools are currently in. There has been zero investment unless something breaks down, and we've been so reactive instead of proactive when it comes to our infrastructure. There's been no investment in our schools that lie within my district. I always think about, Howard and Lookout Valley. They're in my district, but Lookout Valley has been in the same school since my wife graduated, and that was in 1998. There has been no upgrades. There has been not a new building even thought about for that area, and it's time for Lookout Valley and other schools that are in my district, in Clifton Hills, of course, and definitely East Lake and Calvin Donaldson. It's time for new buildings to be built. I think Hamilton County sits on about $120 million in reserve funding. We do not need that much reserve funding. So we need to build some new buildings within our inner city of District 11 and invest more in the infrastructure of those buildings. We can do some patchwork until we can get other buildings built, but it's going to take some consolidations of middle and high schools, and it's going to take some consolidation of elementary schools in my district for us to thrive and us to be in better buildings. Because if you look at all the buildings outside of Alton Park, East Lake, Lookout Mountain, Lookout Valley, St. Elmo, Missionary Ridge, and downtown, we've only had 2 new buildings built, and those are elementary schools. My community don't even have a darn middle school to even go to feed Howard. So that's another problem within itself, and it's going to take some fighting for my community to get a middle school that it deserves. Because right now I live on Dart Street, so the street over, those kids go to my street and up goes to East Lake. The street by Central and back goes to Orchard Knob Middle School. No way in the world we should have to be divided up like that and bus to these schools outside of our district and our communities. So we need someone that's going to fight, and that person is going to be me to fight for infrastructure. That's a part of my platform, school infrastructure for our youth and our communities.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that vision with us. We're going to transition a little bit more to economics right now. So most recent census data reflect that the median household income for white families is almost double that of Black families in Hamilton County. Additionally, Hispanic median income is about 30% higher than Black median household income. In a little bit separate of a tangent, according to data collected from the Federal Reserve Bank, there are many imbalances in the occupational composition between Black and white workers. So fully half of Black workers in Chattanooga are currently working in what you would call or deem less secure sectors, for example, manufacturing, arts and recreation, retail, that are at risk for future automation and technology displacement.
Right.
So knowing those facts, how can we make sure that all Hamilton County residents can access high quality jobs in today's growing economy? And what role do you believe the county plays in creating access to those opportunities?
Right, definitely. And it's sad that those numbers look like that. And it's part of the reason because that we're not prepared when these jobs come in. So we have no choice but to take the lower level positions. But what the county can do is I was a part of a program when VW first came. I was working at the Brain and Rec Center at the time. VW first came and they started preparing adults and young people graduating high school to take on some of those higher level jobs at VW. And I think they may have hired 5 out of that, I think 10 or 15 cohort. The county's going to have to start doing more of that. Just like the paint plant that, for instance, that's coming into the East Chattanooga area. We have to be prepared to take those upper level positions, or we're going to still be making below average salaries. I mean, who can live on, $13, $14 an hour? A family can't live on that, especially if you have 3 or 4 kids. So we're going to have to hold some people feet to the fire. We're going to have to better train our community members to take those upper level positions and stop allowing people from, coming from over in Georgia, Alabama, Kentucky, North Carolina, come take these jobs in other cities outside of Hamilton County and counties outside of Hamilton County. We have to be the number one person for those jobs, and we have to prepare and train the people for those jobs. And the county definitely should take the initiative, just like the city did with Volkswagen, in preparing our adults and our head of households for these jobs.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your insight on that. Another part of a thriving economy includes the success of small business enterprises. That results in rapid growth, jobs, overall GDP. So if you look again at data from the Federal Reserve Bank, it shows that Black-owned businesses start with 3 times less money than white entrepreneurs, gain 1/10 of revenue over time, and get rejected for loans 3 times more often. Yeah, and if you look at in Hamilton County, only 2% of employer firms are Black-owned compared to 76.6% of white employer firms.
Hey,
so what do you?
I raise my hand. That's me. I'm that small business owner that suffers because I can't get approved for a loan. I can't get the resources I need. Thank God we have the Urban League that tries to help build small businesses and other organizations like the Urban League. I was a graduate of Lunch Chattanooga, and they taught me a lot. But we need our banks to give us more money. We need our banks to stop making us jump through all of these hurdles to get funding for our already thriving businesses. It's sad that my business is a year old. I've been in business long before that. I've had all kinds of business ventures as a small business owner, but it's sad. I can show and prove that my business is working, and I still get denied for a loan. It's sad that we have, all of this infrastructure and funding in place for us, for small business owners to, be funded, but we're still not funded. We still have to jump through 1,000 hoops, and we're going to have to just let's round this up together. Let's restart. Let's press restart and figure out and connect with the people that are actually in that community to get those small businesses the resources that they deserve. I always think about over on 38th Street, we have May Nails, and we have I can't think of Greg's son's barbershop name, but we have a whole small complex up there. And that guy does that out of his own pockets. There's no way that a small business owner should have to do anything out of their own pocket when our counterparts are getting so much funding for a business venture that always fails, and they get to go back and get that same funding But we have, as a Black man and as a Black small business, we always have one time to mess up. Now it's the time to stop it. And it's going to take people like me to stand up for small businesses like mine to say, we need these resources to get into our community. That's what the federal funding sent it down for them to be into our communities. And we have to stop abusing those funds and get them to the people that need them. I keep going, Sarah, on that because that's near and dear to my heart because I experienced that myself with being a small business owner. So yeah, that really hits home for me.
Thanks for sharing your experience with that. Our last question is just related to public safety and health.
Oh, yeah.
Hypertension, cancer, and diabetes all present at higher rates in the Black population than the white population in Chattanooga. Specifically, the mortality rate from diabetes for Black Chattanoogans is more than 3 times that of white Chattanoogans. So how do you see the county commission working in partnership with the health department and local organizations to address the issue of chronic disease?
Oh my gosh, we have to do better. District 11, take District 11 for instance. Lookout Mountain is one of the healthiest communities in our county, in our state, in our region, one of the healthiest communities. Alton Park is in the bottom 5 of the least healthiest communities in our state. District 11, Lookout Valley, Alton Park. Why? The first reason why is because of the food desert that we live in. We don't have a grocery store. We don't have a grocery store within walking distance. We don't have a grocery store even. We barely have a grocery store on the bus line. And when you think about, all of our communities and our people that live within our communities, we don't have the access. We don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. We have to take 2 buses just to get to a grocery store. So everything starts with access. We have to give our communities access. I always, when I think about public health, I always think about Emma Willer Homes, right over at the state line. It's in my district. And I ride through and I'm out there frequently. And I always ask myself the question, how are these families eating? Where are they getting their food from? Where are they getting their prescriptions from? And it's always way across town. They have to ride 4 or 5 miles, almost 10 miles sometimes, just to get a prescription or just to go to the doctor. Like I said, it's all about access. We have to partner more with Simple. We have to partner more with our current health department, and we have to invest in more into our communities that are suffering. Even when they moved the Alton Park Health Department from Alton Park on the south side, they moved it up to the old food with a new food city. I mean, that's not any real access. That health department needs to be in the heart of the community, which is Alton Park, so that we're able to take advantage of that health center, and we will take advantage of it if we have access to it. But it all boils down to, when it comes to economics and health disparities and all of that stuff, it all boils down to having access to. And that's something that my community has always suffered from, is having access to. Is not knowing about how I can get involved or how I can get connected with the health services and the proper nutrition that my family needs and deserves, and the proper jobs that my family needs to survive. Because I guarantee you, Sarah, man, my community don't want to have to live homeless. We don't want to have to work, 3 and 4 jobs to make ends meet. No family should have to go through that. So I'm going to fight for it. Even before this office, I'm still going to fight for it. Just like what Stephanie said, you don't have to be an elected official to serve. I've been doing this. I've been serving. Now I'm going to serve on a bigger platform. So go ahead with your next question, because I keep going because I'm so passionate when it comes to, our public safety, our economy, and our health disparities that I experience every day in my community.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. Thanks for your answers to all of those questions. And thank you for being here once again to share your platform and your perspectives with us. Really, we're just going to give you a few minutes since You have some extra time to wrap up and give any closing remarks that you want to give.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to. So the last message I would like to leave for District 11 is now is the time. Now is the time to usher in, a new vision for a new district. Now is the time to vote for somebody that has been in the fight for District 11, even when it was District 4. To have the resources and amenities that we deserve. Now is the time to vote for somebody to vote for me, not somebody, to vote for me, because I'm going to make sure that our economies thrive all together. I've been that connector for so long, and I want to continue to be that connector. And I never thought of myself as a connector until Miss gosh, I can't think of her name right now, but Miss Natalie Jackson. She said, Montreal, she looked at me, she said, Montreal, you are really a connector. I said, yeah, Miss Jackson, I am. I never thought of it like that. And, that is what I want to be for District 11, because we're all alike. The only difference is our economic status and our health status and the resources that we have readily available to our communities. So it's going to take more collaboration and more partnership, and I'm going to be the guy for this job. I don't have a doubt in my mind that I am the person for this job. So now is the time to really step up District 11 and vote for a person that is going to fight with you and for you tooth and nail. That's going to bring you to the table right along when I get to that table. And that's going to keep you aware, and that's going to always be transparent and accessible. So District 11, vote for Montreal Besley. Early voting is going on right now. It ends the 28th, and May 3rd is the last day to vote in the primary. And I need you to come right back out August the 4th and make it happen again, because we're in a fight together, and we're going to make it happen together. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wesley, for joining us and for sharing. We appreciate it, and we appreciate that you're running.
My pleasure.
At this time, I would like to welcome the school board candidate from District 11, Jill Black, onto our virtual stage. Ms. Black, thank you for accepting this invitation to speak with the Urban League.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
Thank you. There's an old saying, you don't have to be elected to serve. So what made you choose to run for the school board?
Well, as you said, my name is Jill Black. I'm running for the newly drawn District 11 seat for the school board. A little bit about me. I was raised by a single mother in Alabama, and she sacrificed saving for her own retirement in order to pay for me to go to private school. That's what she felt like she had to do to offer me an excellent education. And as I got older, I started thinking about, what about the families for whom this isn't even possible, no matter how many sacrifices they make? And no parent should feel like they don't have access to excellent education for their children. Excellent free public education is the cornerstone of the American dream. And every educational and professional decision that I made that led me to Chattanooga 17 years ago is because of my passion around equity in public education. I left the workforce last July to help my family deal with some medical issues. And I started looking around as to how I could spend my time in service of my community. And I got involved in the redistricting process. I started attending the county commission meetings and advocating for a more transparent process. I don't know if you paid attention, but the advocacy efforts worked, and a lot of the county commissioners held public meetings that weren't planned because of the encouragement from the community to have an open process and get input from the community. And I watched them draw District 11, and I just felt compelled to run because I saw what's been happening around public education. I was saddened to see that it became a partisan issue. For me, I feel like it is a community value, not a partisan issue. And District 11 is now the most racially and economically diverse district in all of Hamilton County. We contain multitudes, right? Every type of student that Hamilton County serves lives in District 11. And it was important for me to have someone in that seat, because I feel like it matters who sits in those seats and makes those decisions. It was important for me to have someone there who understands the lived experiences of the people in District 11. I've worked in the community for the better part of 17 years as a social worker, and I've helped find resources for the great-grandmother who is raising her great-grandkids while managing her own health conditions. I've sat in the living room with the household of 4 generations while they're trying to figure out who's going to stay at home with grandpa and stop earning a paycheck because grandpa can't be left alone anymore. I've been there and I've seen the challenges that are faced by the students that walk through the doors of Hamilton County schools. I understand that they're not just little walking test scores, that they're whole little people, and they bring lives and challenges with them through our doors. And to me, it was important to have somebody sitting in those seats making the decisions about their future who truly understands the challenges that they face. And so 17 years ago, I moved to Chattanooga to take a job with Stand for Children, which is a local chapter, the local chapter of Stand for Children. And we worked tirelessly to advocate for universal pre-K under then Governor Bredesen. And I've been active in the PTA at my children's school, Battle Academy. I've been served on the board for 2 years. I joined the education task force for Caleb also when I left the workforce in July, because I was just trying to figure out how I could spend my time, the time that I was given in service. And like I said, when I watched them draw the district, I said, this is how I can best use my time, my skills, my advocacy. And I've spent my free time away from work and my family in all of those different places advocating for improvements to public education. And I felt like this is the best way I can make an impact. I understand that systems and changing the way systems work to better serve people is how we can make the broadest change in our society. And having my background, the background that I do, I just felt like this was the best way that I could make the biggest impact for my community.
Thank you very much for your response. Now, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah Concepcion, our advocacy and research analyst. She's going to continue asking you education-related questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Vicki, for passing it along to me. And thank you again, Ms. Black, for being here today and for sharing with us everything that you're advocating for and hoping for. Just to give you a quick overview of how this is going to work, there's 5 questions that I'm going to ask, and Ms. Vicki is going to stay on in the chat, and she's going to go ahead and just put 1-minute reminders and times up reminders in the chat. So if you want to pull that up and keep it up just for time reminders, you can do that. Okay. And if that all makes sense to you, then we'll get going on the questions.
1 second. Let me pull up the chat real quick. Okay, there we go. All right.
Okay, awesome. So our first question that we're going to focus on relates to budget priorities and resource allocations. So when you think about budget preparation in the next few school years, what would be your top 3 areas of focus, and how would you work with stakeholders such as the Hamilton County Commission to advance the work of the district?
So the 3 pillars of my campaign platform are equity for students, support for teachers, and investment in facilities. To me, I feel like that's where we can make the biggest impact, and that's where the greatest need is. The best way we can address the first 2 of those pillars, the equity for students and support for teachers, is to invest in human capital. We need more adults in the schools to support our students and teachers, including classroom aides, interventionists, counselors, coaches. paraprofessionals, and having more adults in the school system at present to help students resolve conflict and work through difficult emotions that they're having or behavioral issues means that the teachers will have more time to actually teach the students and help make up the learning loss that we've seen over the last 2 years because of the COVID pandemic. That is the best way that we can do. And that's the biggest bang for our buck, is to invest in human capital and having more supports around those students and educators to relieve some of that pressure. I know that a lot of teachers, it's very concerning. A lot of teachers are choosing to leave the profession after, not because they don't love being teachers, not because they don't love being educators, but because we've created an environment that's unsustainable. And the best way, I think we've reached a point where, yes, we need to pay competitively. It's important to keep our talented educators and address those issues. But there are some teachers that are so stressed that it doesn't matter the amount of money we give them. They need help. If they're going to continue to be educators, and if we're going to retain the talented educators we have to provide them with the classroom supports that they need. I know that we have a long list of facilities to issues and maintenance issues to address. But for me, as a school board member, it's really important when it comes to working with stakeholders, regardless of who wins the County Commission District 11 race. I'm committed to working with my county commissioner and all of the other commissioners, because they function as a board to achieve the best outcomes for Hamilton County students. I feel like a lot of the partnerships that we have in the community with businesses who've invested in our Future Ready Institutes have benefited our students, and pursuing those kind of partnerships and broadening the investment of the community and stakeholders is the best way that we can address the needs that we have.
Thank you so much for your response to that. You just mentioned school buildings, so I'll go ahead and proceed to kind of a follow-up question from this. Is current data reflect that 51% of school buildings are rated fair to unsatisfactory in Hamilton County. And according to the district, there's approximately an annual $12 million funding gap for maintaining school infrastructure. And as you may know, in 2018, the county was presented with a request by the Hamilton County School Board to increase property taxes for addressing these issues of deferred maintenance, and that measure failed. So moving forward, how would you ensure that proper investments needed to address the school infrastructure issue are a priority?
Well, it's plain to see that we have played kick the can for far too long. And the long list of facilities maintenance needs, we're paying the price, right? It's caught up to us, and we must use all the available resources that we have to address these needs. Take Clifton Hills Elementary in District 11. It's located in a floodplain. They are using portables to accommodate their students. They need a new school. Governor Lee, at the beginning of this year, proposed a $200 million of state funding to rebuild schools who are located in a floodplain. And so resources like that from the state level can relieve the burden of at least this one school issue from the county taxpayers. And this is just one example of a long list of facility maintenance needs. District 11 contains many schools that have been historically passed over for improvements. South Chattanooga is the fastest growing community in Hamilton County. And moving forward, we must ensure that the communities receive equitable investments in their school facilities to accommodate and reflect the growth of the population that they serve.
Thanks for sharing about that in District 11 specifically. We want to transition for our next few questions to more related to educational equity and student success. Mm-hmm. So for the second question, the Hamilton County Board of Education has defined equity as the following: ensuring every student receives what they need to help them reach their full potential, regardless of race, language, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, physical abilities, or any other characteristic of their identity. In education, equity means that every student has access to effective teachers, resources, experiences, and the academic rigor they need to be successful regardless of socioeconomic status. Do you believe that acknowledging equity gaps as it relates to student success is important? And where are we lacking currently in Hamilton County in fulfilling this statement's goals?
Of course, acknowledging equity gaps is important. That's how we can measure how our school system is doing, is how big the achievement gap is between some of the more at-risk subgroups, right? As I stated before, my convictions around public equity and public education are what drove my educational and professional path that led me here to Chattanooga 17 years ago. Hamilton County has not lived up to the promise of providing the opportunity of the true American dream for all the residents in District 11. There are talented, bright students in every single school in Hamilton County, but not every student receives the support that they need to reach their full potential, right? Not every school provides the same opportunities that students need of experiences to its students. This is where we can get creative by using community partnerships, nonprofits, and other resources, business investments to provide extra support for school communities where the families just are unable to be as involved as they are in schools in other places in order to address these equity gaps. We must also really take care to provide challenging curriculum and student-centered learning opportunities. An important factor in a student's academic success is their ownership over their own learning. Providing students with the opportunity to pursue their interests while teaching valuable skills that can lead to a lucrative career is also plays a part in closing those equity gaps. Rigorous and challenging academic paths, whether they lead to a trade certification, a 2-year degree, or 4-year college and beyond, should be available to all students in Hamilton County, in every single school in Hamilton County.
Thank you for your response to that question. So the Office of Equity for Hamilton County recently adopted a 3-year equity plan, which highlighted about 8 focus areas, one of which was about reducing disproportionate suspensions and expulsions of students of color. So just to give one statistic, Black students in particular are 6 times more likely to be expelled than other students in Hamilton County. So this disparity has pointed to a need for trauma-informed restorative practices, training on behavioral management and de-escalation, and increased staff support. So how do you plan to support these proposed changes as a school board member, and what other recommendations would you propose?
This is something I'm incredibly passionate about. If we give students the tools, we can change the trajectory of their path forever. Currently, social emotional learning is being used as a political pawn, and it's hurting our students. SEL curriculum teaches students how to regulate their emotions, navigate difficult situations, resolve conflict. And these are skills that prepare students for the workforce, to being successful in addressing challenges that they'll face in the real world moving forward. We understand and know that schools cannot do everything. We cannot control the circumstances that shape our students outside the walls of the school in our community. However, we can teach our students to navigate these challenges, the challenges that they face, and manage the effects of their trauma. We have a specific opportunity while they're in school to teach them the skills that they need, not only in traditional learning, reading, writing, and arithmetic, but also how to manage their own emotions, how to navigate conflict, and how to be successful. You know, restorative practices focuses on building a community within the school, and even more so within the classroom. When there's an issue, students work through it together to restore their relationships. When we talk about meeting students' needs, and providing the tools that they need to be successful, this is an important piece of the puzzle. Are these things considered part of traditional curriculum? Not necessarily, but teaching self-management skills associated with social emotional learning and restorative practices gives educators the tools that they are hungry for. They don't want to send their students out of the classroom because they understand that it doesn't help. And our educators are hungry for something different and something that works. It's our job as school board members to make sure that the community understands the value of these initiatives and to our students and how they can address some of the biggest challenges that our students and educators face in the classrooms. These are incredibly important pieces, and instead of using them as political pawns, we need to invest resources in these things that will help keep students in the classroom and learning.
Thank you for sharing your perspective on that. For our fourth question, another area of focus that was talked about in the current district plan is recruiting and retaining a diverse teaching force. The current school year marks the first in which district leaders must submit plans for increasing teacher diversity to the Tennessee Department of Education and annually report on those outcomes. So what would you propose to help improve teacher diversity and retention?
Well, we all know how important it is that the role models in a child's life reflect the community at large. These formative relationships foster confidence, empathy, a vision for their own lives, and a love of learning. One influential educator in a child's life can change their own dream for the future. Hamilton County currently has the Aspire and Grow Your Own programs that provide a path to teacher certification for community members who are interested in becoming educators. And we need to broaden those efforts and recruit diverse educators, possibly partnering with historically Black colleges and universities to recruit our teachers. And then provide the support that educators need so that they do stay in the field, like we've discussed before. We need to provide competitive pay and classroom supports so that once we recruit these talented educators, we can keep them in our school systems.
Thank you for your response to that. We just have one final question. Looking at the Hamilton County Schools class of 2020 Ready graduate data, only 21% of Black students and 25% of Hispanic students graduating from Hamilton County high schools demonstrated readiness for meaningful post-secondary education, a training program, or workforce entry, compared to 53% of white students. So why do you believe that these disparities exist for student readiness in Hamilton County? And what do you believe can be done to increase the amount of students, and in particular students of color, who are deemed ready to graduate by the end of high school?
Well, if these statistics don't shock our community, then we're doing something very wrong. Personally, it's like I get a pit in my stomach when I think about the reality of the situation. I wish I could sit here and give you the answers and lay out a plan that would fix all of these things. But sadly, this hasn't been prioritized, discussed, or addressed in a meaningful way yet. But to cut through the shock of it, I want the constituents to know that I'm committed to this issue. The Latinx and Black communities are the fastest growing segments of our population. If we don't address this issue, we will feel the impact, the economic impact as a community, and families will feel it directly. This is a priority for me because every student deserves the opportunity for their best future, and our community's future depends on it.
Thank you so much for answering that question and all the others before. We have a few extra minutes, so I just wanted to open the floor to you. If you wanted to make any closing remarks or last comments, you can do so now.
For me, I've always been passionate about public education. As I've stated before, this passion has led me directly or indirectly to this path. I am the right person for the job to represent District 11. I'm personally invested in the success of public education as a parent of 2 kids who are in our public schools, but not just because I want the best for my own children. I want the best for all the kids in Hamilton County. This is a community value, and investing in public education is the best thing that we can do to secure the economic future of our families in Hamilton County, and to make sure that we continue to be competitive as a community. We must step up and make these investments and ensure that our children are getting the best opportunities. The last 2 years have presented challenges that must be addressed, and it's going to take serious leadership and creativity. In my professional life, I've had a lot of practice addressing complex issues with too few resources. I feel like I've been training for this for a long time. If you're interested in finding out more about me or my campaign, you can go to jillblackforschoolboard.com. I have a Facebook page, Twitter, and Instagram associated with my campaign. Jill Black D11 is the tagline in all of those places. And I would appreciate your support and your vote in August.
Thank you so much for being here with us today, and thank you for your service to this community. It's always inspiring to hear about individuals who are excited to run and serve the community. So thank you for that.
Thank you for this opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
At this time, I would like to welcome school board candidate from District 11, Virginia Ann Manson, to our virtual stage. Thank you for accepting this invitation to speak with the Urban League.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me and look forward to our conversation.
Thank you, and so do we. There's an old saying, you don't have to be elected to serve. But as an elected official, tell us who you are and why you chose to run for this specific public office on the school board.
Sure. I was born and raised in Hamilton County. My children were raised here in Hamilton County, and my grandchildren are being raised here now. My father, Dr. Hicks Corey, was a pediatrician for over 40 years in Hamilton County. And he was always a living example of servant leadership to me and my brothers. And why putting others first was what life was really about. He worked with children his whole life and felt strongly, as do I, that to have a great future, we need to invest in the next generation. I've served as a board member at on Girls Inc., Little Ms. Mag Day Early Learning Center, and with T.C. Thompson Children's Hospital. I've also been an administrator at the Baylor School for the past 15 years. In order for me to be successful in my role, it was required for me to work with the headmaster, teachers, students, and parents. And it was imperative that I help everyone get what they needed to be successful here. I've had the honor to work in an environment that achieved academic excellence, and I just feel burdened to take the skills I've learned while serving on both the board and the school level to fight for District 11 to be a place where our students, teachers, and administrators have all they need to be successful.
Well, thank you very much. Now, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah Concepcion, our advocacy and research analyst, to continue asking education-related questions. Sarah?
Thank you so much, Ms. Vicki, for passing that over to me. So just to make sure that there's clarity on how this is going to move forward. So there's 5 minutes to answer each question, and I'm going to ask 5 questions. And Ms. Bone is going to stay on this and just put in the chat when there is a 1-minute reminder and then when time's up on a question. So she'll still be on doing that, but I'll be asking the rest of the questions.
Okay.
So as long as that makes sense, we'll get going.
All right.
Okay, awesome. So the first question that we're going to be talking about is related to budget priorities and resource allocations. So when you think about budget preparation for the next few school years, what would be your top 3 areas of focus, And how would you work with stakeholders such as the Hamilton County Commission to advance the work of the district?
Well, my top 3 areas of focus are very straightforward, and they all deal with the importance of the important issue of parent involvement. And I'll work with parents, teachers, administrators, and community leaders to, number 1, foster home environments that encourage learning. Number 2, express high and realistic expectations to foster goals and achievement. And number 3, to become involved in children's education at the school level and in the community. And, I think it's important to have a relationship with, the principals in the schools to know what's going on within each community school, and in fact have talked to them now. And it is interesting how every community school does have different, certainly different communities and neighborhoods, but different challenges and different strengths, and giving the autonomy to principals and teachers and trusting them.
Thank you so much for your answer to that. Just as a follow-up question to that, looking at current funding, it reflects that about 51% of school buildings are rated fair to unsatisfactory in Hamilton County. According to the district, there's an approximately $12 million annual funding gap for properly maintaining school infrastructure. In 2018, the county was presented with a request from the Hamilton County School Board to increase property taxes for addressing these issues of deferred maintenance. And that measure actually did fail. But moving forward, how would you ensure that proper investments needed to address the school infrastructure issue are highlighted as a priority?
As far as moving forward to ensure proper investments are addressed, the asset class of the school board is our school buildings. Not only does Hamilton County have value in these school buildings, assets, they are also revenue producing assets for our county. If we look at these issues as a business, we will bring maintenance to the forefront and find money in our budget, which taxpayers have entrusted us with.
Yeah, thank you for answering that. We're going to transition the next few questions to more about educational equity and student success in the classroom. Mm-hmm. So Hamilton County School Board of Education has defined equity as the following: ensuring every student receives what they need to help them reach their full potential, regardless of race, language, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, physical abilities, or any other characteristic of their identity. In education, equity means that every student has access to effective teachers, resources, experiences, and the academic rigor they need to be successful, regardless of socioeconomic status. Excuse me. Do you believe that acknowledging equity gaps as it relates to student success is important? And where are we lacking currently in Hamilton County to fulfill the statement's goals?
Well, and I'm going to repeat what I said earlier, but I think, first of all, student success is of the utmost important to me in my campaign. This is really why I'm running. And again, as the director of Baylor, we strive for excellence in education for every student who walks through our door. Every student, everyone individual as individual. And my plan really would be to take this successful blueprint in education and apply it to our school system. The gaps I see in our county, again, I bring back to keep saying this again, is where parent involvement is little to none. And having parent involvement not only causes the parents to invest in their children, but also causes them to invest in our community schools. And until that happens, I don't know, it's hard to talk about equity when we don't have equality in parent involvement. I think that's so much of what it comes back to.
Thanks for sharing that. Let's see our next question. So the Office of Equity for Hamilton County recently adopted a 3-year equity plan, which highlighted 8 focus areas. One of these areas of focus was on reducing disproportionate suspensions and expulsions of students of color. Black students in particular are 6 times more likely to be expelled than other students in Hamilton County. This disparity we see as pointing to a need for trauma-informed restorative practices, training on behavioral management and de-escalation, and to increase staff support. How do you plan to support these proposed changes as the school board member? And what other recommendations would you propose, if any?
Well, I repeat myself, but I think parent involvement, it's as simple as that. I believe it is important to not look at suspensions, but what schools those suspensions are coming out of. I fall back on 3 areas of focus in this question: home environments, which encourage learning, setting goals and expectations in the home for learning, and parent involved in schools.
Thanks for answering that. Our 4th question: another area of focus in the current district plan is on recruiting and retaining a diverse teaching force. This school year marks the first in which district leaders must submit plans for increasing teacher diversity to the Tennessee Department of Education, and annually reports on outcomes for this. So what would you propose to help improve teacher diversity and retention?
I'm not sure that I or our board is the best at answering this question. We need to support our superintendent and his central staff to overcome these obstacles in our school system. Across all Tennessee, only 17.5% of teachers identify as non-white, when students of the same demographic make up around 38% across Tennessee. These numbers come from, I think, 2018 and 19 report. Though there has been controversy around Education Commissioner Penny Swin, Tennessee is working very hard to recruit more minority teachers. No matter teacher skin color, retention is still the silent killer of Hamilton County schools. There's studies by Geist, Biano, and Lynn in 2018 suggesting that intentional recruitment and support for teachers of color in these programs is essential for success and increasing diversity in the profession. And I agree, but I don't believe it takes a study to understand this. If we want more teachers of color in our school system, this starts in our universities and our high schools to create career paths, not just for teachers of color, but all teachers, so we can better focus our efforts on retention after they begin working in our school system.
Thanks for sharing your perspective on that. Just one more question. So looking into the Hamilton County Schools class of 2020 ready graduate data, only 21% of Black students and 25% of Hispanic students graduating from Hamilton County schools demonstrated readiness for meaningful post-secondary education, a training program, or workforce entry, compared to about 53% of white students. Do you believe, or why do you believe, that these disparities exist for student readiness in Hamilton County? And what do you believe can be done to increase the amount of students, and in particular students of color, who are deemed ready to graduate by the end of high school?
I'm going to repeat myself again. Today, tomorrow, all the way to election, parental involvement. And parental involvement is the most vital aspect of not only a student's performance, but also the ability for that student to demonstrate readiness. I believe as a director in an educational institution, as a mother, and as a community stakeholder, that we are not prepared across the board, and we must change that. While Randy Boyd served our state as a commissioner for Governor Hassan, Tennessee launched the Drive to 55, which was a mission to increase the number of Tennesseans with a post-secondary degree or certificate to 55% of all Tennesseans by 2025. I'd like to work with our superintendent, teachers, administrators, and parents to establish goals and drive to 55 in our own county. Increasing demonstrated readiness in the Black community, Hispanic community, and the white community is paramount to continue recruiting first-class businesses and high-paying jobs in Hamilton County for all years to come.
Thank you so much for sharing on that point and on all the others. We have a few extra minutes here, so I just wanted to open it up to you if you want to give any closing remarks or have any final words.
Well, as I said at the beginning, being from Hamilton County, being from the greater Chattanooga area has had a great impact on my life. And I feel like that there's no better way to give back than to serve. And for me, my entire adult life, and I have a passion for education. My entire adult life has been dedicated to educating my own children as well as others. I feel like that's where my strength is, and where I can give back to the county that's given so much to me. And certainly for my District 11, but also for all Hamilton County, because a strong education is crucial for an individual's happiness and productivity. And a strong education is a key building block to our county's future.
Yeah, thank you so much for that and for taking the time to be here with us.
Thank you.
We appreciate that you're running, and it's encouraging to see public officials who are trying to serve the communities that they've grown up in. So
Well, I sure appreciate it, and thank you.
Mhm.
It was nice speaking with you.
You as well.